Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I believe it looks like, as I'm looking at my screen, we have everybody here in attendance. So let me have, is Ms. Taylor available?
Yes, I am, Chairman.
Ms. Taylor, if you could please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez,
Present.
Vice Chair Schaefer, Vice Chair Schaefer,
Present.
Member Gaines,
Present.
Member Cohen, Member Cohen,
Good morning, present.
Deputy Controller
Good morning,
Towers.
present.
Present.
So that's unanimous. We're all present. We have a quorum. We will officially actually reconvene our meeting from yesterday. So this is basically a continuation of our meeting we started officially yesterday. And with that, let me just remind everybody once again, and especially those that are on this call with us as partners, you may or may not be aware that we all share one line, which makes it sometimes difficult for our transcriptionists to understand who's making motions, who's speaking. So once again, if we could just have your cooperation and let myself know as you're asking to speak, so we could officially identify you and the transcriptionist could record who's speaking, who's making motions, who's seconding, and all that good stuff. With that, let me have Ms. Taylor, please, if you could first give us the first order of business for today.
Our first order of business is an announcement regarding public teleconference participation. Good morning, and thank you for joining today's Board of Equalization meeting via teleconference. Throughout the duration of today's meeting, you will primarily be in a listen-only mode. As you may know from our public agenda notice and our website, we have requested that individuals who wish to make a public comment fill out the public comment submission form found on our additional information webpage in advance of today's meeting, or alternatively, participate in today's meeting by providing your public comment live. After the presentation of an item has concluded, we will begin by identifying any public comment requests that have been received by our board proceeding staff, with the AT&T operator providing directions for you to identify yourself. After all known public commenters have been called, the operator will also provide public comment instructions to the individuals participating via teleconference. Accordingly, if you intend to make a public comment today, we recommend dialing into the meeting on the teleconference line, as the audio broadcast on our website experiences a 1 to 3 minute delay. When giving a public comment, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. We ask that everyone who is not intending to make a public comment, please mute their line or minimize background noise. If there are technical difficulties when we are in the public comment portion of our meeting, we will do our best to read submitted comments into the record at the appropriate times. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. If you would please call the first order of business.
The first item on the agenda is item I, Board Governance, continued proposed amendments of the board members' governance policy, mission statement, and commitment to strong governance based on annual review and subsequent board discussion for possible changes. Mr. Nanjo, Chief Counsel for the Board of Equalization, will be facilitating this discussion. Mr. Nanjo.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez, Vice Chair Schaefer, members of the board. At this point, attached to the public agenda notice is the current copy of the board governance policy. All changes that have been requested and approved by the board over the last several months have been made. refresh the board members' recollection, I was asked to do a final review, make all the changes that were previously approved, and present that for the board's possible adoption. That is the document that is attached to the agenda notice. Just as a footnote, no changes have been made at this point to the Bagley-Keene section. That is remains from the prior language. As you may remember, Vice Chair Schaefer presented a memo to the members to review the Little Hoover Commission report in December 2020. It's my understanding that that discussion has been moved to later in the year, given the Proposition 19 discussions. So at this point, our recommendation is it is appropriate for the board to approve the governance policy as is. At such later time as we have the discussion on the Bagley-Keene section, if the board wishes to make any additional changes, they can make it at that time. With that, I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you for your report, Mr. Donjo. In reviewing the draft you provided, I think it covers everything we discussed at the November meeting, with the exception of 2 unfinished items. A further review by Controller Yee and the communications protocol by our executive director, and 1 correction. After we conclude our discussion, I would like to take a vote to approve the entire policy if possible. First, the correction is to put the statutory references either next to each of the 21 powers and duties of the board on pages 9 through 12, or footnote them. I recall us discussing this, and I don't have a preference of where they should go, but I do want them included. It makes the policy more user-friendly, and it's consistent with most other parts of the policy where many legal references are shown. Members, do we have any objections to including the legal references?
Vice Chair Schaefer, I have
Member Schaefer.
no objection.
I have no objection. This is Member Gaines.
Member Cohen, are you comfortable with that?
He's referring to this right here. These are the
Yeah.
legal references. He said 9 to 12, right?
Member Stowers, are you comfortable with that?
This is Deputy Controller Stowers. Yes, I'm comfortable with that.
Is Member Cohen with us? I see her.
Yes, sir, I'm here. My
You
apologies.
comfortable with that?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a consensus on that, so we'll move forward with that. The second one is Ms. Fleming's operational memo that was just sent to us in response to our need for communications protocol in item F, communications with the executive director or designated staff and assistance in responding to any inquiries. And that's on page 17 of the document. I reviewed it last night and find it to be very practical and professional. It lays out a clear communication path for us to follow on any matter within our powers and duties. In my opinion, it's far better than we could have said about our issues within our policy. So I propose to ask Henry to delete the current sentence we have under F now and instead state the board members will follow the communications protocol for the board members and their staff with the BOE executive management team and operations memo 0001 attached. Do we have any questions for Ms. Fleming's members?
Vice Chair Schaefer, I have none.
Thank you. Member Gaines, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah,
Or do you
that's
have any
fine.
questions? You're good?
That's fine. Thank you.
Member Cohen?
Yes, it's all good with me.
How about Ms. Stowers?
Yes.
Thank you. With that, let me move on to the third one, which is the Controller Yee's comments on item B, agency staff, item C, the budget change proposals, and item D, the legislative analysis on pages 12 through 13. And I'm going to turn to Ms. Stowers to elaborate on that, or if she needs any changes or if she's comfortable with that. Let me open it up to see what her views are on these three paragraphs. Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. The comments are concerns, it's only dealing with agency staff. It starts off with the original, governance policy, but it has additional statement, however, pursuant to Government Code Section 15604. The board may instruct the ED to introduce or provide information on expert assistants and employees, including those who are newly hired, promoted, or reassigned, and receive a description of their positions, qualification, and job duties in order to learn how they assist in the performance of their job and conduct of the people's business. And again, it's citing Government Code 15604 for the basis of that additional language. I don't see that language in 15604, so I'm assuming that it is an interpretation of 15604, but it kind of is starting from, in my opinion, pushing us up against being involved in personnel matters. So I really want to get clarification on why do you feel that it's necessary to include that language?
I'm comfortable. So you're proposing a change to that? Is that what or you want to make it a little bit more clear? You're muted, Ms. Stowers. You're muted. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I would suggest that we delete that additional statement starting at however, unless you feel very strongly that we must have it in there. I just feel that it might give the perception that the board members are trying to be involved in personnel matters, which we cannot be involved in except for the executive director.
I'm comfortable either way, unless the members feel otherwise. Hearing no other.
Vice Chair
Oh,
Schaefer.
Vice Chair Schaefer, yes, go ahead.
Is there a problem that we're trying to address here? I prefer less language more rather than more language. And, you know, if we, I'm not real happy that these statements get to be longer and longer and longer. I would side with Ms. Stowers if we're trying to shorten something. That's my only comment.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with Member Stowers' suggestion on eliminating that, I guess, where it starts at however, pursuant to Government Code 15604.
Thank you, Member Gaines. Anybody else? Hearing, it sounds like everybody's comfortable with that.
I have no strong feelings one way or the other.
Okay, that's where I'm kind of on. So Ms. Stowers, go ahead. You're muted again.
Gosh, I'm slow today. I move that we limit that language started however.
All righty.
But the rest of the information dealing with the budgets and so forth, I have no recommended changes on that.
And you're good with the item D as well, legislative analysis on pages 12 and 13?
Yes.
Okay. Members, are there any questions of Ms. Stowers before we move forward?
I
Member
do
Gaines,
have, no, I don't have a question of Member Stowers, but I do on this legislative analysis. I've got a question if I could
Sure.
just, I'm wondering if this could be, can someone explain explain that particular paragraph to me? Why is it there?
Ms. Stowers, are you? I think you're muted.
I didn't put that, the additions I did not put in. The first part of it, neither the board nor the board member can interfere with and influence the process was when the original governance, and was just basically a copy of the Government Code section 15600. I believe Chair Vasquez, you and your staff are recommending the additional language, which I actually did not take exception to, because we already do that. We discuss less changes, proposals in open session. We have been doing that, at least this current board, and I don't see that where that's a conflict in law or pushing up close to having a conflict in law.
Vice Chair Schaefer here. I don't see any reason for paragraph D, which you have to go to the next page to see the rest of it, because it really runs 7 lines. I would include in our adoption that we just eliminate from however on in paragraph B and the entire of paragraph D.
Yeah, I just,
Well, to
can I
answer your
ask a question? This is Member
Member
Gaines.
we were actually, I had my legal staff, which is Chris, and I believe she's on the line. We were just trying to clear it up and try to make it as clear as possible. But if it's confusing, let me see if Chris is on the line.
Yeah. Chair Vasquez, I feel that paragraph D is covered in other rules, regulations, etc. I don't think it's necessary here.
Is Ms. Casada available on the line? Chris?
Are you muted?
I don't know.
Yes. Thank you. Just right on the top there. Yeah.
Chair Vasquez, this
Yes.
is Ms. Taylor. We do not see Ms. Kazad on the line at this time.
Oh, no.
We can have she can dial in.
So Chairman Vasquez, this is Henry Nancho, Chief Counsel.
Yes, go ahead.
As I can provide a little bit of clarity to answer Member Gaines' question, and perhaps provide more information for Vice Chair Schaefer. D, legislative analysis, that first sentence that says neither the board nor the board member can interfere or with or influence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a statement of one of the prohibitions that was included in AB 102 and is specifically cited in the government code. I believe the intent in the original governance policy was just to kind of highlight, as part of the governance policy, some of the new prohibitions, and as an acknowledgement that the board was going to fully comply with them. I believe, if I understand correctly, Ms. Kazad suggested that additional language on D, where it starts, however, anything that constitutes a public record, to clarify what, as been stated by Deputy Controller Stowers, what the board already does, and that is something that is appropriate under that government code restriction. So it was just a highlight and perhaps an effort to present more clarity. So as your Chief Counsel, I don't have an issue with either portion of D.
Question, if I could, Member Gaines.
Member Gaines, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to get clarity here, because That means the BOE could come up with a legislative analysis that the 5 members of the BOE disagree with, and that's okay?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's specifically stated in the government code that the board members are not allowed to interfere with the agency's legislative analysis. And in addition, I believe after AB 102 passed, I was asked as your chief counsel to seek clarity from the Attorney General's office, and they also confirmed that that was in fact the prohibition. Now, that being said, that's interference with the agency's legislative analysis, if you will. That doesn't necessarily prohibit the board members from utilizing their own staff or creating their own legislative analysis.
Okay, but what if it's inaccurate? We can't point out that there are inaccuracies in the analysis that should be corrected it sounds like we'd have to do it in a board meeting. I guess we have
to do it in a board.
We have the authority to vote to support, oppose, or remain neutral. So I guess this is kind of an interesting scenario, because you could have an analysis on a bill that is written by BOE, the administration, and you could have all 5 of us vote against it. And I guess it would still proceed. We wouldn't have any authority, but there would be a no vote on an analysis potentially.
It's a little bit different, Member Gaines. The legislative analysis that they're talking about is when we provide technical expertise to the legislature.
Okay.
It's not regarding legislative analysis in support of or against a bill.
Okay.
The prohibition
is
when we're paying. So, does that answer your question?
That helps. Yeah. So just to clarify, let's say there was a bill that was moving through the legislature and the BOE weighed in on it. Do we have any authority in what that analysis says as elected board?
Well, okay. So part of the reason the government code is stated the way it is it's not typical for governmental agencies to either support or necessarily support or oppose legislation. More often than not, governmental entities tend to take neutral positions on legislation. Where governmental entities tend to be involved in the legislative process is we are depending on the agency, asked to provide technical analysis, and the concern that the government code was drafted to prohibit was inappropriate interference by the board members on.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Technical.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I'm just
so
more concerned
if it's a matter of supporting or opposing a bill, that's something that traditionally has been done by the board and not by the agency.
Yes, that's right. And we still have that authority, right?
Correct.
Yes, okay. And then we can carry our own sponsored legislation too.
If you find a sponsor, that is something that you can do, and you can join and support that as well.
Right, such as if we had we're talking about Prop 19, right? So we're going to come up with ideas. We might even write language, and then it would be, and let's say we all supported that. That could be a bill concept that we could hopefully get, carried through a committee or an author.
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe that's what the second part of the language in this D section is addressing, is the fact that yes, that is something that the board members are still able to do, and this is how they do it.
Okay, that's great. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm fine.
Perfect. Yeah, because see, members, if you look at the old governance, it actually gave us restrictions, and we attempted to try to clear that up and to really lay out what we can do. All right. So if everybody's good with that, and if there's no other comments, suggestions, or questions or changes, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the governance policy with the changes we have agreed upon today.
This is Deputy Controller Stowers.
Yes, Ms. Stowers.
I move that we approve the governance policy with the changes that we recommended today.
What can I do on that? Second.
All right, it's been moved by Ms. Stowers.
Second?
It's been seconded by Member Gaines. Hearing no other comments or questions. Let me have Ms. Taylor check to see if there's any public comment on this first before we vote on it.
Thank you. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there is anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment regarding this matter, board governance?
And just as a reminder, if they would like to ask a question, please press 1, then 0. And we do have a question coming in. One moment. And we'll go to the line of Ron Ortale. Please go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure this is the right time, but I also sent an email, and I'm asking that you guys read that. It's going to say pretty much the same thing. First, I'd like to thank your legal representative for acknowledging that the BOE's letter to county assessors dated December 11th was in fact incorrect regarding the primary home requirement in regard to family farms. I believe this was due to the poorly worded ballot measure. Although the BOE's legal representative acknowledges confusion regarding the interpretation of the word continue, which is at the very heart of the proposition, he ultimately interprets it in a manner that is not supported by the ballot measure itself, and is likely not what voters intended. For example, some definitions of the word continue include carry on, resume, or commence. The ballot measure does support an interpretation of a home continuing as a primary home of a transferee, but says nothing whatsoever. Can you hear me?
Point of personal privilege, Chair Vasquez has a comment.
Yes, you know what? Let me just, if you can hold that public comment for a little bit later in the agenda, we will be discussing that. We're actually right now, we were asking for public comment on our governance.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll be around later then. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair Vasquez, I would like, this is Vice Chair Schaefer, I would like the gentleman to identify himself and who he represents. He's appearing anonymous to us, and I'm sure he doesn't intend that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, is there anybody on the line that's willing or is asking to speak on this item, the governance?
There are 2 people in the queue, and as each person comes up, if you'd like, I could ask them what they plan to speak on.
Please.
All right. AT&T, can you please bring up the next speaker?
Certainly, and that's from Mary Ann Welch. Please go ahead.
Yes, I really do agree with Mr. Gaines. It seems to me like he's trying to clarify if you guys make an analysis on anything, which I think is really important because of Proposition 19. If you're going to submit any recommendations to the legislator, and yet if they're not going to listen to it, this is a problem. So the little bit that I'm trying to understand here, I think Mr. Gaines is correct that do you have any, why? Here's what's a problem. The legislator did not do their job. They give it to the Board of Equalization to figure out what to do. Then you people try to listen to the public and then try to put something together to the legislators. If they don't want to listen to it, then it's sort of mute. So to me, I think Mr. Gaines is trying to get clarity on if you guys are going to do your work and submit anything, is it even going to be received to be of any value to the legislators? Also, what he said, that if no one listens, can he get somebody on the committee or I guess somebody in the legislature to either fix the bill or do something to remedy the situation? That's it.
Thank you.
AT&T operator, can you please confirm with the caller which item they want to speak about before opening the mic? We are on item I, board governance.
And next we go to Peter Weschler. Please go ahead.
Yes, I was commenting on Prop 19. The gentleman's comments confused me, so I will hold my comments for later.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, is there anybody else?
AT&T operator, is there anyone else in the queue?
No one else in the queue at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, with that, members, we have the motion that was made by Ms. Stowers and second by Mr. Gaines that we will approve our governance policy with the changes we have agreed upon today. If I can get Ms. Taylor to please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen. Member Cohen.
Yes.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all of us present. With that, that concludes this discussion. And let me have Ms. Taylor, if she would please call our next item.
Our next item is Administrative Consent Agenda, item J1, Retirement Resolution for Mr. Mike Harris, and J2, Board Meeting Minutes for December 16th, 2020, and December 17th, 2020.
Members, I would like to extend my appreciation to Mike Harris for his dedicated service to the Board of Equalization. Mike Harris is retiring after 30 years of state service. Mike began his career as an assistant property auditor appraiser in the state assessed properties division and completes his outstanding career as a business tax administrator 3. It's my understanding that I believe he might be on the line, but let me ask the members if there's any comments or questions as we acknowledge Mike Harris for his 30 years of service. Member Gaines, go ahead.
Yeah, Chair Vasquez, is this the appropriate time to make comments in reference to Mike's career? And
yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just I want to thank Mike for a commitment of 30 years to the state of California and the good things that he's done for the Board of Equalization, and in particular for us as newly elected board members, to have him available for the last 2 years during this transition was just so helpful and so needed when we've been understaffed, and to help us kind of get to the other side, across the river and to the bank safely. So I just want to thank Mike for dedicating an entire career to what the Board of Equalization does, and 30 years of commitment is a long period of time for someone. So I wish him the best in his retirement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Schaefer here. I've enjoyed working with Mike Harris in my 2 years on the board, and I'm really astounded that 30-year veterans working with the state, that so many people are able to achieve such a unique record. And I don't know what he's going to do after leaving us, but I know that he has so much talent. He's not going to stay home and talk to the cat. I hope he'll keep us informed on where he goes, because we know it'll be a big positive and reflect well on his service to the state. Thank you.
Deputy Controller Stowers here.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
So Mike Harris, congratulations on your retirement. 30 years of service has been very valuable, been extremely helpful to us as a board and prior boards. I hope you take this time to stop, relax, smell the flowers, listen to the birds, and enjoy your retirement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, this is Malia. Good
Oh,
morning.
yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Member Cohen.
I just wanted to say congratulations to Mike Harris as he begins to transition to a new and I am sure more exciting life. Thank you for your service, sir.
Yes, yes. We know 30 years, now he can enjoy it and relax, hopefully. But with that, members, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the administrative consent calendar agenda, which would include the minutes as well that we just discussed.
Vice Chair, I so move.
It's been moved by our Vice Chair.
Second.
Second by Member Gaines. Hearing and seeing no other comments or questions. Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll.
Certainly. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
Thank you. The next item is K, other administrative items. The Executive Director's report has one item, K1A, organizational update, will be presented by the Executive Director, Ms. Fleming. Ms. Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director, will present item K1C, operational priorities and projects.
Next page of your agenda.
Ms. Fleming, are you ready to present?
Good morning, members. Chairman
Good morning.
Vasquez and honorable members, this is Brenda Fleming. Just doing a quick mic check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Go
thank you,
ahead.
members. Today's report will provide updates on our priorities and accomplishments since last month's meeting, a brief highlight of some of our 2020 accomplishments, and an overview of our priorities for 2021. As we've been doing for the last few months, I'll then turn it over to my executive team to report on the operational activities and projects and their respective areas of responsibilities. It is a privilege to work with this team of amazingly talented professionals. I applaud all of the members of the BOE management team and extend my thanks and appreciation to all of you who perform our constitutional and statutory duties on a daily basis. I always want to give a kudos and a shout out to the team. Members, since our December board meeting, staff have been operating in an all hands on deck mode, focusing on the implementation of Proposition 19 and continuing the work of the other priority projects and tax administration duties. I anticipate reporting back during this first quarter of 2021 on the following board assignments. 1, the Workforce Planning Workgroup report. Secondly, recommendations for 2021 board member work plan update and our reference manual. Also, restoring legacy documents on the BOE website. Consideration of placing letters to assessors, LTAs, on the board meeting agenda prior to publication. Additionally, establishing a BOE advisory board. Members, just a highlight, if you don't mind, of our 2020 accomplishments, you did a lot of heavy lifting. And so we celebrate that and acknowledge that and give you credit for your incredible leadership. As we begin 2021, and then reflecting back on 2020, this year, as you know, in 2020 was not typical, extraordinary in a number of ways. Specifically, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, which kicked off in March,
and 2 major property tax propositions on the November ballot created unique challenges that I'm proud to say that the BOE family met head on. Members, as the board secretary and the agency's executive director, I am and continue to be thankful and appreciative of your support to move the agency forward. I'm grateful and honored to work with a team of extraordinary people. I'm honored to work with you. Staff have been reporting on their progress throughout the year. I'd like to highlight again those accomplishments. Let me begin by saying we shifted from a less than 10% to over 75% of staff teleworking and finding solutions to the workflow processes that were affected by the shelter-in-place orders. We adopted new procedures for holding remote board hearings via teleconference in compliance with the governor's shelter-in-place orders. We did so while still ensuring full public participation. As was noted yesterday, we had a significant number of taxpayers that participated in our discussion. We completed the BOE relocation of our headquarters from downtown Sacramento to Natomas. We supported the Workforce Planning Work Group to address challenges facing the Property Tax Administration workforce. We produced and adopted the board roll of state assessed property with a total assessed value of over $119 billion and transmitted these values to the 58 county assessors. Kudos to you, members. Successful completion of 27 unitary and non-unitary assessment appeals while adapting to remote appeals conferences and oral hearings. That also ensured taxpayers maintain full access to appeals rights. Members, you adopted and billed the 2020 private railroad car tax roll for a total tax amount of over $10 million that will go into the state's general fund. You held public hearings and adopted language to complete the regulatory process for Property Tax Rule 202, which is the allocation of aircraft for certificated air carriers and scheduled air taxi operators, and for Property Tax Rule 462.500. Change in ownership of real property acquired to replace property taken by governmental action or eminent domain proceedings. Members, staff have tracked 278 Assembly and Senate bills for the 2019-2020 legislative session. Members, you hosted the annual meeting of the State Board of Equalization and County Assessors in October via teleconference. Members, you hosted 2 statewide informational hearings, as well as many public policy hearings related to COVID, pending legislation, and other items affecting property tax administration. Members, you issued guidance in the form of letters to assessors to assist taxpayers, county assessors, and assessment appeals boards with remote hearings to extend the deadline for business personal property filing. The County Assessed Properties Division published 7 county surveys, samplings, and issued 67 LTAs and 24 county assessor-only guidance and material. The 2020 Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing was effective and involved quite a bit of tax issues and taxpayers, and so we're proud of that. Members, we published the 2018-2019 annual report. The State Assessed Properties Division completed 21 audits of state assessees. The Legal Department issued 34 legal opinions. The County Assessed Properties Division issued 194 permanent and advanced appraiser certifications and 6 assessment analyst certifications. Additionally, members, in 2020, BOE provided training to 152 students in classroom classes, 243 students in classes provided through American River College and Sac State, and 1,359 students via graded self-study sessions. Again, thanks to the BOE staff who did this lifting. Next up, members, if I could transition to 2021. First of all, members, Happy New Year. Shifting now to the year ahead of us, I'd like to highlight our priorities for 2021. Our highest priority, of course, is continuity of government under COVID-19 and ensuring that our constitutional duties and functions continue to be performed. We will remain committed to ensuring that our duties are completed successfully and, of course, always keeping you informed. Implementation of Proposition 19, again, remains a top priority. As was discussed yesterday and will continue to discuss today, there's important work to be done on the implementation of this proposition. Similar to other legislation, The first year typically means a lot of all hands on deck and most of the heavy lifting as we acutely pay attention to the implementation planning details. As a part of this project, members will continue to provide monthly updates to the board and then interim updates as you need, and including providing information on our websites. It is important to educate and inform the public on Proposition 19 and its implementation. We look forward to partnering with you and the county assessors to extend our Proposition 19 education and outreach program to ensure taxpayers are informed. Later today, our communications chief, Peter Kim, and Lisa Thompson, our taxpayer rights advocate, will share more about our education and outreach plan for the public. In 2021, we will continue with our strategic plan and the implementation activities. As a part of our modernization, we will focus on improving our website, expanding our communications plan to ensure our taxpayers and other interested parties are kept informed, and people really understand who the BOE is and what we do. We'll focus on enhancements to our technology systems, focusing first on those systems that are needed for Proposition 19. We'll increase our investment in training, staff development, and succession planning. We'll be expanding our EEO program to include diversity, equity, and inclusion functions. I'm also pleased to announce as a footnote there, I have extended an offer to our EEO officer and it's been accepted, so we anticipate our new EEO officer focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion starting February 1st. Now, members, Ms. Renati will be working with the management team to provide the regular updates on all of these priorities. Finally, as a part of our ongoing quality check, we intend to develop a plan for regular reviews of our assessors' handbooks to ensure accuracy and relevance. Again, I'd like to thank our staff, but if I may give a special note of appreciation and thanks to Honorable Don Gakel for all of his contributions and his assistance and accomplishments in 2020 working with us. And then, of course, moving into the new year, I'm looking forward and enjoying working with the Honorable Ernie Dronenberg, the new CA president, on the implementation of Prop 19 and other areas of property tax administration this year. Members, of course, I always want to thank you, my members and my heroes, for your leadership. It's been invaluable in helping to rebrand the BOE and ensuring that our taxpayers and our stakeholders are aware again of who we are and our value to the state and local governments. Members, this is just a snapshot of the 2020 accomplishments, certainly not the full list. There's much more to be done in modernizing and strengthening our state tax administration systems. Thank you for an exciting 2020. I look forward to working with you on our 2021 strategic goals and priorities. As always, thanks to everybody for all of their contributions. I'll now turn it over to our executive team, which will include a report from Ms. Renati, Mr. Nanjo, Mr. Young, and Ms. Thompson. Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Ms.
Chairman
Renati.
Vasquez.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I am Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today, I will provide a report on the updates regarding the agency's operational priorities and projects since last month. The first item is our workforce capacity. Currently, we have 22 positions in active recruitment, with an additional 12 positions in the preparation phase for recruitment. This accounts for 67% of our agency's vacancies. We continue to focus on our recruitments, hires, and succession planning to ensure our workforce capacity is optimized. Members, the next item is an update on our facilities. On December 3rd, the governor issued stay-at-home orders with the closure of all state offices. As such, the majority of BOE staff have been teleworking with a minimal number of staff coming into the office as needed to handle essential business operations. We continue to follow all safety measures as provided by the California Department of Public Health to ensure the safety of all staff. On January 8th, the governor introduced his proposed budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. In regard to our agency's budget, the most significant item we are currently tracking is the identified budget surplus and whether the salary reductions related to the furloughs that took effect on July 1st, 2021 will be restored, pending possible CalHR and labor negotiations. Additionally, we are reviewing ongoing operational savings to our general expenditures as a result of the teleworking and other efficiencies to that end. It is very early in the budget process, and we will keep you updated as the budget proceeds through the legislature. Members, the last item I would like to present is in regards to the agency strategic plan. Since last month's meeting, we have focused most of our efforts on Proposition 19 implementation, including rebuilding and revitalizing our BOE website and communications regarding Proposition 19. Our BOE website home screen and banner now include prominent graphics and links to information regarding Proposition 19. Other updates are in the works to ensure the public has access to the most current information, as well as tools to assist in making our website accessible and easier to navigate. This concludes my report. I am available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Schaefer here.
Yes, Vice Chair Schaefer, go ahead.
Mr. Nutty, did you have any observations on the impact on the Capitol and our agency as to the proposed threats of January 20th that the Capitol security is expecting?
Thank you for your question, Vice Chair Schaefer. We are currently reviewing the information provided by the governor's office and CalHR. We'll be sending out that information to staff to ensure their safety is of the utmost importance to us. Last, we have had closures of the downtown offices, and we get that information out to staff as soon as we know. But as we are, yes, focusing on the safety of the employees for possible.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Members, any other questions of either Ms. Fleming or Ms. Venati?
If I could, Member Gaines.
Member Gaines, yes, go ahead.
Just appreciate what Executive Director Fleming has done through the year, through all of COVID and the challenges that we've had. And I don't know, I don't have a real handle on how efficient we've been with the stay-at-home order. I guess that is a question that I have, but I know that we have, we seem to have managed. It's not like my phone's ringing with complaints, so that's very encouraging, and also encouraged by our division chief, Ms. Renati, and what is happening on the employment side, that we have 12 active applicants that they're reviewing. So that's good news. Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing or hearing no other comments, let me have Ms. Taylor please call up the next item.
The next item is K2, Legal Counsel Report, presented by Mr. Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel. Mr. Nanjo will present K-2A, the Legal Workload Quarterly Report. Mr. Nanjo?
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel. Hello again, Chairman Vasquez, Vice Chair Schaefer, and honorable board members. This has been a challenging year for all of us with COVID. I want to start off first and foremost thanking my team for their continued dedication and hard work throughout 2020 and their flexibility in adapting to telework. We continue to build our team to provide some reinforcements to our staff. We have currently 2 positions in active recruitment, which we hope to fill very soon, and we have the possibility of additional positions to reinforce our ability to respond to some of the increased Proposition 19 inquiries we've been receiving. As a result of COVID-19, the legal department remains primarily in a telework status, continues to remain in telework status through first quarter 2021. And the legal department continues to support the board, executive office, the property tax department, and our larger stakeholders through our work. As you know, the legal department has, in the last quarter, primarily focused on state-assessed appeals season. Most of my attorneys were providing roles in supporting SAPD through the appeals process and acting as the department's representatives during hearings. One of my attorneys served as the appeals attorney, helping appellants prepare their cases before the board, and also working on summary decisions and hearing summaries. In December, the legal department completed the majority of the 2020 state assessed appeals, 27 petitions in total. One ended up withdrawing early in the process, 9 were resolved through agreement, and 17 required summary decisions, hearing summaries, or written decisions of the appeals attorneys. The remaining activities under state assessed appeals for first quarter 2021 is that our appeals attorney has 3 pending written decision assignments, 2 section 40 decisions, and 1 findings and a decision opinion, which should appear on the February PAN. With the board's adoption, the 2020 appeals season will come to a close. As our new year begins, our primary focus is in supporting the board in the interpretation and in implementation of Proposition 19 and on our ongoing recruitments. In addition, the legal department continues our legal workload. With regards to Public Record Act requests, in the last quarter, we had 62 completed inquiries. 9 are currently pending, including recent requests. We expect work in this category to continue as pretty much that level during the first quarter of 2021. In administration and support of the Board Proceedings Division and Executive Offices, we have 7 completed assignments in the last quarter, 2 are currently pending. And again, this work will continue. In the area of publications review, we had 10 completed assignments with 2 requests currently pending. In light of Proposition 19, we expect work in this category to increase quite significantly. This work will include legal review of legislative analysis for pending and/or recently enrolled legislation, letters to assessors, and other guidance that will be developed. In the regulations area, in fourth quarter 2020, we continue to make progress toward finalizing the changes to property tax rules 202 and 462-500. We had 2 public hearings and board approval of the proposed final language. We expect these 2 rules to be finalized with the OAL in the first quarter of this year. 2 pending projects for this quarter. We expect to continue scoping work for Section 100 changes to the rules for tax appeals and updating our regulations relating to Form 700 compliance. Also on the horizon for 2021 are regulations related to Proposition 19. The legal department is also beginning to look at rules which will require changes as Proposition 19 implementation continues. In the technical advice area, we had in the last quarter 7 completed emails, 2 completed memos, 16 completed phone call inquiries, and 3 special projects. Our fourth quarter numbers are historically a bit lower given all the SAPD appeals work that we have to do. For first quarter of 2021, we're seeing increases in phone calls and email inquiries related to Proposition 19 implementation that we're coordinating with the Property Tax Department for a consistent and unified response. As a footnote, I want to thank Property Tax Department because they've been taking the lion's share of the Proposition 19 inquiries for us, and we've been trying to maintain a single point of contact, so that's been very helpful. Currently pending, we have 13 email inquiries, 4 letters, memos, 12 phone calls, and 1 special project, which are pending. In closing, again, I want to thank my team for the hard work. It's much more difficult to try to get our work accomplished when we can't collaborate together as easily because of the COVID shelter in place. We hope that 2021 will bring us a return to normalcy and help us reduce our backlog even further. Thank you very much, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nanjo. Do we have any questions or comments of Mr. Nanjo?
Vice Chair, I have none. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gaines?
Gaines, if I could, I want to thank Mr. Nanjo for all the progress that's been made in our legal department with the additional hiring, and looks like we still have maybe 2 more positions or so. So that's encouraging, and I think you're going to be busy with Prop 19 over the course of the year. So, but thank you.
We're definitely getting that impression.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, let me have Ms. Taylor please call the next item.
The next item is K3, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report presented by Mr. Dave Young, Deputy Director of Property Tax. Mr. Young will present K3A, a report on the status of pending and upcoming projects, activities, and departmental issues. Mr. Young?
Yes, good morning. Good morning, all. Good morning, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. My name is David Young, and I am the Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. So today I will give you some updates as to the pending projects and the upcoming issues of the Property Tax Department. The first item I wanted to report on is our state assessed properties division. Staff has already begun work for this year's evaluation season. Staff has been updating and reviewing their appraisal templates and their methodologies, and they have already started work on the capitalization rate studies. The capitalization rate study is a study that they use to employ the income approach on the valuation of a state assessed property. Second, staff, State Assessed Properties Division staff has already mailed out the property statements as on January 4th to all state assessees. That is to inform them that when the appraisals are completed, they can request a copy of their working papers and a copy of the capitalization studies if they so wish to review that. The property statements that was mailed out, they are due on March 1st, 2021. They are allowed to ask for an extension if one is needed. If they do not file by March 1st and without an extension, there are penalties that will attach to the assessment. My next item to update is with the County Assessed Properties Division. We have restarted the guidance, issuing and drafting of guidance on community land trust property, and specifically on low-income housing built on such properties. As you may recall, that project was put on hold just a little bit, waiting legislation. It has since passed. Staff has been able to redraft the guidance, and it was issued just this month for interested parties review and comment. The next item I wanted to bring you up, give you some updates on is Prop 19 implementation. Staff has seen a marked increase in inquiries, both by phone and by written inquiries, email. Staff has been it's been all hands on deck in trying to answer those questions. The increase has been substantial, but we are trying to manage the influx. Staff has also been reviewing prior guidance issued on matters that Prop 19 would impact, change ownership, the base year transfers. So staff has been reviewing that and will continue to do so. Staff has also been revising and creating forms, as you've heard yesterday, in connection with Prop 19. So work continues on that. It has been a big increase in the workload. So, and then, as Ms. Fleming already mentioned earlier, the last update I gave on LTAs, I reported in December that the CAPD issued 63. It is indeed 67. 4 more were issued since December, and that puts us right in line with prior years. And in connection with the LTAs, actually 2 have already been issued this year. I've mentioned the Community Land Trust LTA. That was our very first LTA, was issued beginning on January 8th. And on January 19th, our second LTA was released, and that was on the assessment appeals remote hearing during COVID-19. So we are on track, and we are looking forward to providing guidance. Up next on our LTAs, we have a couple on the horizon that are being drafted and under review. We have an LTA on a new construction exclusion. We have one that is to be issued probably within the next month or so on the valuation of certificated aircrafts. It's our listing of the standard flight times for 2021. The assessors use that in making the assessment of commercial aircraft. We also have on deck the budgets and workload report on budgets, personnel, and appeals data. That should be coming out very soon too. And the very last one I wanted to mention is we also have an LTA on vessel valuation factors for lien date 2021. And that provides information to the assessors on the assessment of vessels. This concludes my update on the Property Tax Department. I am available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Is there any questions or comments for Mr. Young from the members? Seeing and hearing none, I will ask Ms. Taylor if she would please call the next item.
The next item is K4A, Legislative Research and Statistics Division Chief's Report, presented by Ms. Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy. Ms. Renati will present an update on legislative issues. Ms. Renati?
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I am Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today, I will provide a report on the legislation that may impact the Board of Equalization. As you are aware, the legislature reconvened on Monday, January 11th, and we are actively working with the assessors to advance legislation for the implementation of Proposition 19. While we have been busy with Prop 19, we continue to track and monitor bills which could impact the BOE's tax programs or administration. Current bills include Assembly Bill 2, introduced by Assemblymember Fong of Bakersfield. This bill would require each state agency to, on or before January 1st, 2023, review that agency's regulations, identify any regulations that are duplicative, overlapping, inconsistent, or out of date, to revise those identified regulations and report to the legislature and governor. Next is Assembly Bill 29 by Assemblymember Cooper of Elk Grove. This bill would require materials to be made available on a state body's internet website and to any person who requests the writings or materials in writing on the same day as the dissemination of the writings and materials to members of the state body, or at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting. Also, there's Assembly Bill 119, introduced by Assemblymember Salas of Bakersfield. This bill would require county assessors to make publicly available on their internet websites information about direct levies applicable to each tax rate area within the county. As you will recall, at the BOE's December 2020 meeting, the board approved 2 legislative proposals presented: an amendment of Revenue and Taxation Code Section 1752.2 to provide that the same property tax rules that apply to local assessment appeals boards would also apply to multi-jurisdictional assessment appeals boards. And the second proposal is an amendment to Revenue and Taxation Section 214.02 to eliminate the sunset date, which expires on January 1st, 2023, which would adversely affect land trust and conservancy properties' ability to receive a property tax exemption from taxation. We are currently identifying potential authors for these two proposals. This concludes my update, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Renati. Members, do we have any questions of Ms. Renati? Hearing and seeing none. The only quick question I have, Ms. Renati, and I know you're kind of filling in right now with the vacancy of Mr. Durham, who's moved on. I was wondering if there was a way to put together at least that one sheet that he used to do that was kind of like a chart that kind of laid out all the different bills that you just cited that you're tracking, and those potentially that might come before us or come before the legislator that would impact the BOE.
Thank you for that suggestion, Chairman Vasquez. That is something on my list of things to do with Prop 19 and the end of the year activities. We got a little behind, but that is definitely on my list, and I'll make sure to get that to the executive director so it can be provided to all of you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Comment if I could, Member Gaines.
Member Gaines, yes, go ahead.
So I want to thank Deputy Director Renati for her update. And so should we assume that Ms. Renati is going to be tracking Prop 19? Because I know we're going to talk about actions later on in this meeting, and I'm trying to figure out who is our lead person when it comes to interaction with the legislature in terms of, I'm talking about staff at the BOE.
Is Ms.
Thank you for that
Fleming?
question, Member Gaines. This is Brenda Fleming.
Yes.
Please just continue to direct anything that you or your staff need to me directly. You can also send it to the executive office inbox. We've got a temporary team in place to track the legislation and kind of take the leadership role for the Prop 19 implementation activities. So if you send that to me and to the executive office directly, we'll make sure that it gets to all the appropriate people and that you're continually updated as we progress with Prop 19 implementation.
Okay, now are you talking to us as board members, or was that for Lisa, or what? Ms. Renati?
No, I'm responding to your request,
okay.
Member Gaines, as to who would be the lead. So we're in the process of recruiting to backfill behind the prior ledge director.
Right.
We still have some other staff around that can lend some assistance behind the scenes. So we'll continue to basically perform the same duties until we get the full-time chief replaced.
Okay, yeah.
But in the interim, if you want to just send, if you want to send the information to me and to the executive office directly, we'll make sure that the communications are there and all the tracking for not just the Prop 19 activities, but any other legislation. We'll continue to track that.
Very well. So then if we have a question or tracking, so should we look to you, Brenda, in terms of kind of tracking where we are in terms of legislation and communication with the legislature and in the interim until someone else is hired?
Yes, sir.
I don't want to, my concern would be that we drop the ball in the middle of a critical period with legislation moving forward on 19 because now we have a vacancy. So I'm just trying to, it sounds like we go through you and you'll track it on a regular basis for us.
Yeah, and we're working with establishing a team, and I appreciate that. We too were, and acknowledge that it wasn't the best timing, but it was a great opportunity for Mr. Durham to have a promotional opportunity. It happens to be just terrible timing. But we do have a number of other people on our staff who also have experience with the legislature, and so we'll continue to track it.
Okay.
We absolutely are committed to not letting anything slip through the cracks. Part of it also will be working with you in your offices, all the member offices directly, because I know you too are also involved in the Capitol. So we'll make sure that we stay in contact. So the information sharing and the status updates are provided.
Sure. I imagine we're all going to be busy across the street.
Exactly, Member Gaines and all members. This is really an all hands on deck. So all of us will be staying in contact, including your offices, staying in contact with colleagues, et cetera, and external stakeholders to keep us all informed about all aspects of activity and progress on Prop 19.
That's great. Thank you.
A lot of moving parts on that one, so definitely all hands on deck.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions or suggestions? Hearing and seeing none, let me have Ms. Taylor, if you could please call the next item.
Certainly. The next item is K5, Taxpayer Rights Advocates Report, presented by Ms. Lisa Thompson, Taxpayers' Rights Advocate. Ms. Thompson will present an update on the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. Ms. Thompson?
Good morning. How are you? Since the last update, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office has been working with the communications officer to update information on the agency's website, such as issuing a press release in December reminding taxpayers that were affected by wildfires during 2020 that they can apply for property tax relief. Similar to other departments within our agency, the TRA office has been responding to calls on Proposition 19. Additionally, a large part of our office's work in the last couple of months has involved working with taxpayers to assist them with problems relating to their property tax bill or defaulted taxes, since the delinquency date for the first installment of property taxes was December 10th, 2020. I am pleased to inform you that the board, I am pleased to inform the board that the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office has completed its work on the content for the upcoming 2019-20 Taxpayers Rights Advocate Annual Report. It has been submitted to the Forms and Publications team for them to create the publication. We anticipate that that report will be published in February. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yes, Vice Chair Schaefer, go ahead.
Ms. Thompson, you mentioned the number of taxpayers that have been contacted your office this past year that you're working with. Is that more than 10 or is it less than 10? Do you have some estimate as to the number of persons your office has been contacted by this past year?
It varies from year to year, but for fiscal year 19-20, it was approximately 250.
Okay.
And
thank you very much.
Those are actually taxpayer cases. Those there might be some other contacts that we refer to other agencies, but those are taxpayer cases.
Okay, thank you very much. Very, very good.
Anybody else? Hearing and seeing none, let me ask Ms. Taylor, she called the next item.
The next item is M1B, Board Discussion on Strike Team Reports. Board member discussion and possible actions on the implementation of Proposition 19, the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled, Families, and Victims of Wildfire or Natural Disasters Act of 2020. The first sub-item is M1B1, Legislative Actions.
Thank you. Members, before us now is our discussion and decision on the proposed legislation, and then after that, the discussion and decision regarding a possible letter to the legislator on the legislation. Regarding the legislative package and the statutory provisions you are recommending, is Mr. Moon available to provide a summary of the key elements of each of these statutes before us now? Is he on the line?
Mr. Vasquez, this is Richard
Yes.
Moon from the legal
Yes.
department.
Go ahead.
As we had discussed yesterday, the CAA, along with board staff, had begun to do work on draft legislation for each of the two large pieces of Proposition 19, the parent-child exclusion, along with the grandparent-grandchild exclusion, and then the base year value transfers. On the parent-child exclusion side, the key elements of Proposition 19 were the requirement for the family home that's transferred to also be continually used as the family home of the eligible transferee, of the child or the grandchild, and that is reflected in the legislation, in the draft legislation. There were a couple questions that were raised regarding Proposition 19, again, that were discussed yesterday with the parent-child exclusion surrounding the requirement of a child to continue to use the home as the family home, and whether if the home is given to more than one child, whether it was enough for one child to use it as a family home, or if all of the children needed to use it as the family home. And based on the research we had done, the draft legislation reflects that as long as one eligible transferee makes it their family home, that would be enough to qualify, and that and an eligible transferee needs to continue to use the family home as such, as a family home, but it does not need to be the same eligible child. Those were the major parts of the parent-child exclusion that we had discussed. For the base year value transfer provisions, again, Proposition 19 made several key changes, one of which was the ability to transfer the base year value 3 times instead of 1 time for seniors 55 and over, and for severely disabled individuals. Again, that's reflected in the draft legislation. The draft legislation also covers issues such as timing and filing. And of course, there are a number of issues, again, as we discussed yesterday, that remain open and that will be the subject of future guidance and perhaps as well future amendments to legislation if that legislation is passed now. As far as the process, Mr. Dronenberg and Mr. Prang yesterday had explained that the CAA and the BOE, working in partnership, had come up with now 2 different versions of the draft legislation, and there's another version of the draft legislation that the I believe Legislative Council has requested that will not change the substance, but will make it such that hopefully it can get passed in a more timely manner. And so what we are requesting is that the board would approve staff's recommendation to move forward with the legislation in a manner that would make it most appropriate for the legislature to approve in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. Members, are there any questions of Mr. Moon? And I understand there's also, and I see on the screen now, the president, Mr. Ernie Dronenberg, as well as I understand, I think Jeff Prang is on the line as well. So they are also here to participate if you have any questions of the assessors as well. But let me turn it over to the members and see if there's any questions. And I see a hand actually from my Vice Chair Schaefer.
Yes, Mr. Moon, you were discussing severely disabled coming under entitlement. There was an issue raised as to severely physical disabled and mental disabled. I favor giving equal protection to mental disabled as long as we have the ability to determine when that starts and when that ends. Just similar to like Constitutional Amendment 25 that deals with the President of the United States. There has to be a recognition of a severe mental disabled and when it starts and when it ends. Is that going to be evaluated at some point?
Yeah, Mr. Schaefer, the draft legislation currently does not limit severe disability to physical limitation. So mental disabilities could also be included in that severely disabled requirement.
All right, thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is
Yes,
Malia.
Member Cohen, go ahead.
I do have a question. Mr. Dronenberg, thank you for joining us, and Mr. Moon, thank you again. So my question is I'm wondering if the Board of Equalization staff and the assessors I'm curious to know, have you guys had any discussions with the firefighters or the Realtors Association on the proposed language?
Well, I guess I can speak for the assessors. The firefighters.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
I'm sorry. This is the president, Ernie Dronenberg. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. This is Ernie Dronenberg. I'm the president of the California Assessors Association, and we have had discussions with the realtors, and we've had offer of help from the realtor legislator that carried the bill, Bob. And but we have not had any discussions with the firefighters. They weren't part of the technical part of the bill, so I don't know if they're interested in talking about the technical part.
Yeah, I understand that part of the technical part. I am curious, or at least interested, in knowing their perspective. They are partners in this endeavor. You know, I mean, they stand. The whole way the legislation was passed was that, you know, it'd be money, a windfall of money for fire departments, county fire departments. And so, are they on the line? Are they included in this conversation, Mr. Vasquez?
You know what? I haven't seen or heard of them. I know Jeff Prang is on the line. Maybe we could ask Jeff and see if he's had any conversation with those folks as well.
Molly and Board Member Cohen, I would be more than happy to talk with them if somebody could give me a contact for their legislative lobbyists or their person.
I just jumped on the line, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
Mr. Dronenberg, I'm happy to give you that contact information, and we'll certainly pass it on to you. And I think it's important for us to begin to open up that dialogue. I'm sorry to cut you off, Assessor Prang. Please continue.
My apologies. It's a short meeting. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just got on the call, so I came in the middle of this conversation. I'm not quite certain what we're talking about.
Okay. So I just raised a question as to whether or not the firefighters were part of this discussion on creating language, right, on implementing Prop 19. I also asked if the Realtors Association, and Ernie, you kind of made me laugh when you said they offered to help. Well, of course they offer to help. They kind of got us in this mess that we're in. So I'm glad that they're offering to help. I think that the comments that they read yesterday on the you know, for the record, were long and confusing, to say the least, almost like this legislation. So I am grateful that they are making time and they are rolling up their sleeves to join us. I think it's important that we have the firefighters a part of this conversation. Again, I'm just interested in knowing what their perspective are. Now, they may be listening, I don't know, but Dronenberg, I will call you and get you that information, okay?
Thank you, Member Cohen.
I can report.
Ms. Cohen, this is.
Go ahead, Mr. Prang.
I can report that our association, through the good offices of our legislative advocate, Rob Grossglauer, has been in regular contact on this the development of this legislative package with both the firefighters as well as the realtors. The firefighters, there's not we're keeping them informed, but we've not identified necessarily a role for them to take, because their piece of the measure is a little bit different than our needs operationally and administratively. But we do keep them informed. We've shared with them our developments on the legislation as we've gone along. We're much more engaged with the realtors on this language. They're going to the bulk of Prop 19. Deals with matters that is of primary concern to them. So they've been, they're very eager to work with us to ensure to it that this can be implemented and administered quickly and fairly.
Oh, I see. Thank you, Assessor. I appreciate that. The firefighters are also a very strong and significant lobby with members, many members up and down the state. So I don't want to discount them. It's better to overshare and share information and they not do anything with it than to not include them. So I'm just, if you don't mind, I'm going to step in, show a little leadership. I'm going to help make that connection for us, so to make sure that we're not that we're dotting all of our I's and crossing our T's. Thank you. That's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Ms. Cohen, this is Richard Moon.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Moon.
I just wanted to let the board members know that as Mr. Prang had said, that their legislative advocate has been in touch with the firefighters and the realtors. We, board member staff, have been in touch with the realtors for substantive discussions, and they had expressed to us a couple items that they had wanted to talk about, and so we have had conversations, and we will be in continued conversations with representatives from the Realtors Association, and of course, we'd also be happy to have any conversations that the firefighters would want to have as well.
Mr. Moon, so you said you've had conversations with the realtors, but not the firefighters.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Member Cohen, I think that's a good point. Right now we need all hands on deck here. This is, something that we need to resolve as soon as possible.
Look like Jeff Prang has his hand up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Prang.
I just wanted to continue a little bit more on the firefighters, even though they're not really impacted by the decisions we're making and the proposals we're putting together legislatively. Their whole role is to receive a revenue stream from the revenues that are derived from these changes. So they will be a very good ally for us in helping educate members of the legislature on the importance of this, because they are an important political stakeholder in Sacramento. Hopefully they can join with both the assessors and the Board of Equalization in stressing to legislators the urgency of getting this matter resolved as quickly as possible. So I think they have a much more strong political and/or advocacy role to play than technical role in the development of our legislation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's important for us to also, but to bring them along, right? They need to be at the table, whether they actively participate and engage on them, because, like you said, the firefighters have a substantial amount of money to gain in this transaction from the legislation. And if we are implementing or creating something that would impact that windfall of revenue, then the last thing we need is the firefighters to be against us and to be lobbying and working against us, which is why I think we should keep them close and keep them informed and not take them for granted.
Good point. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. Let me just say, while I have the two assessors here, is there anything that you wanted to share before I open it up to public comments from our folks on the line?
Well, so I think Member Cohen is correct, and Jeff and I will get together and make a call to the firefighters and get them involved in the legislation as far as getting it through the process.
Thank you. Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Cohen, I see your hand. Is your hand still up, or was that an old hand?
It's an old hand. I don't know how to get it down.
No problem.
I only know how to get it up. I don't know how to get it down.
It's okay. Just checking.
Thanks.
Let me ask Ms. Taylor, is there anybody, do we have any written comments on this one first before we open the line up to AT&T?
Yes, Chairman, we have approximately 13 written comments, and then
Okay,
we can open the line.
All righty.
Would you like me to begin?
Please.
The first comment is from Anonymous. As a California taxpayer, Proposition 19 should not affect me on a future parent-child transfer of non-primary residence property. I hope the California State Board of Equalization will recognize that the language written in Prop 19 did not clearly and purposefully state that the exclusion of the first $1 million of the full cash value of all other real property would be part of the changes. One brief reference on page 2 of the proposition saying that subdivision H of section 2 shall become inoperative should be construed to affect primary residence property transfers only, as the language in Proposition 19 only mentions inherited primary residences and never mentioned inherited non-primary residence properties. I would hope that the state recognizes that Proposition 19 has nothing to do with inherited non-primary residence properties. The state should restore the second part of subdivision H of section 2 to maintain the exclusion of the first $1 million of the full cash value of all other real property. If the state wishes to remove the exclusion of the first $1 million of the full cash value of all other real property, this should be put forth to the voters on a future ballot. Our next comment is from Jeanette. The BOE board must up the ceiling level for heirs that live in the family home to keep the tax bases affordable for a person making a minimum California wage. As of January 1st, 2020, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. California minimum wage is $13 per hour for employers with 26 or more employees and $12 for employers with 25 or fewer employees. And Santa Clara's minimum wage is $15.40 per hour. The median family income for those areas is $118,400 according to HUD. Santa Clara County is close behind. There, a household of 4 bringing in $94,450 is now considered low income under HUD guidelines. There must be a cap of a percentage on how much the property tax can go up at any one time. Landlords can't raise rents more than 2%. Why can the state raise property tax on heirs over 100 to 800% at what time? There are systems set up to show the price differences across counties in California by the above examples. So there should be a price differences on the property assessment of heirs living in the family home to protect heirs who want to stay in the home, even if they only make a working wage. Otherwise, the state of California is exercising classism and forcing heirs to sell the family home or farm because of the outrageous reassessment hikes burdened on heirs living in the family home. We can't have the same blanket cap across the state. It is not fair to families and heirs. First, they should not be a blanket formula for all of California. The assessor's office should make special circumstances for families who live in areas where the appreciation has been so high, where Prop 13 has protected families. There are multi-generational families in these places who will not be able to pay the new assessed value. The formula needs to be different for the Bay Area because the poverty rate is different in the Bay Area. These are things that Prop 19 didn't address. For example, in my case, we are 3 generations living in one home in Saratoga, and we can stay there only because of Prop 13 and Prop 58. We have invested on the land residence my mother bought in 1970 and built an ADU for us and to let my mom age in place so we can be together. Property values have skyrocketed in the area, and now with Prop 19, when we inherit this parcel, we will not be able to pay close to the $35,000 per year in property tax. I'm a single parent and work in public schools. I'll be forced out of my childhood community and hometown because of Prop 19. You're creating a classist, wealth divided California, which Prop 13 and Prop 56 protected. This should not happen. This next letter is from Ron Ortel. My comments are made in regards.
Excuse me, Chair Vasquez.
Yes, Vice Chair Schaefer, go ahead.
I would like to ask the anonymous presenter who gave us a rather lengthy presentation that was very educational. All we know about him is that the person is from Santa Clara County and specifically Saratoga, and has 3 generations in the area. I feel that the public are being cheated, and we are, by not knowing who this person is. If this person has a vested interest, we should be able to evaluate that. Usually when a person gives an anonymous opinion, they're under a protection order, they have a domestic relations problem, they may be wanted by creditors, there's some financial danger to their health or their finances if they go public. I resent somebody who may be a able-bodied citizen with a great education and a lot of things to share with us, giving us a very fine presentation as this man or woman did, but we have not a clue whether who the person is. I just don't think that's right. I think that anyone asking to appear anonymously should put on our application the reason. There'd be a lot of reasons, and we should be very liberal in granting that. But for us to receive a rather lengthy presentation that is full of some strong academic views and may have a lot of merit, we would like to consider it. But I think we're also entitled to consider the source. If there's some financial or political bias behind it, we should be able to evaluate it. I think that's one of our jobs. And I would ask that our staff not receive anonymous inquiry without asking for a statement as to the basis of the request, and we should be liberal in granting it. But I feel cheated that we are dealing in the dark here. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Taylor.
Okay, these comments are from Ron Ortel. My comments are made.
Ms. Taylor?
Yes?
Ms. Taylor, I'm sorry, this is Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel. I just want to remind the board members, unfortunately, under Bagley-Keene, we cannot require or give any preconditions to public members making a statement, and that includes requiring them to identify themselves. For that basis, Member Schaefer's comments are something that the public should keep in mind, but unfortunately, under Bagley-Keene, we cannot require any further identification of any callers. That being said, Member Schaefer's comments are well taken, that it's easier for the board members to consider and weigh credibility and other factors if they know more information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Schaefer again. Now, Mr. Nanjo, I was not requiring they identify themselves. I'm accepting that they can remain anonymous. I would just like them to state briefly the reason for the request for anonymity while remaining anonymous. So I'm really more on their side than you think, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor.
My comments are made in regard to concerns regarding lack of clarity, unintended impacts, and incorrect interpretations regarding Proposition 19 as it relates to the parent-child transfers. I was not informed of or aware of the BOE meeting until today. Despite multiple phone calls and messages to your office regarding this proposition, as well as multiple unsuccessful attempts to communicate with legislative representatives over the past couple of months. However, I was subsequently able to view a portion of the meeting online. First, I'd like to thank your legal representative for acknowledging that the BOE's letter to county assessors dated December 11th, 2020 was incorrect regarding the primary home requirement in regard to family farms. As with other concerns, the initial incorrect interpretation appears to be primarily due to a poorly worded ballot measure placed on the ballot at the last moment in conjunction with special interests and without due diligence. Although BOE's legal representative acknowledges confusion regarding the interpretation of continue, which is at the very heart of the proposition, he ultimately interprets it in a manner that is not supported by the ballot measure itself and is likely not what the voters intended. For example, some definitions of the word continue include carry on, resume, or commence. The ballot measure does not support an interpretation of a home continuing as a primary home of a transferee, but says nothing whatsoever regarding a current primary home requirement of the transferor. As such, it appears that voters interpreted the measure to include any home that would continue as a primary home of a transferee without necessarily being the current primary home of the transferor. In fact, that's what some of the ballot arguments essentially state. As an example of the confusion, one commenter during the meeting on 114 noted that a home, while not the primary home of the transferor, was already the primary home of a future transferee. And yet this was interpreted by your legal representative as not qualifying for an exclusion in regard to the portion owned by the parent. Again, this interpretation is not supported by the ballot language, nor does it appear to be the intent of the voters. Then there's the disproportionate impact this would have on those with disabilities. Ergo, parents with several children, one or more of whom might have a disability, who would not necessarily be able to afford the parent's primary home, and were instead planning for years, if not decades, to ultimately move into a home that is not the parent's primary home. Unfortunately, those disabled, limited income children may not be able to afford the increased tax. Of course, this would also apply for those with disabilities who intended to move into a parent's primary home, but without a market value in excess of the excluded amount afforded by Proposition 19, who would then be effectively priced out of that home as a result of the increased tax, as noted by another commenter today. Another unforeseen impact of the lack of clarity in the ballot measure itself, and again, disproportionately impacting those with disabilities, limited incomes. The disproportionate impact would also affect parents of advanced age, disability, and at high risk of COVID and impacted by shutdowns, who, unlike younger, healthier parents, are not able to take any action to mitigate the impacts of this devastating proposal for their children, disabled or not, prior to its implementation. As far as continuing, the same question would apply regarding family farms, e.g. those with previous, past, or potential farming activities, but which may not be currently active. Again, the ballot measure does not address this, nor does it address the degree, amount of farming, ranching, or logging activities required. As an example, it appears this should include a child continuing farming operations without necessarily demonstrating commercial farming operations as of the date of transfer. Perhaps more so in the case of parents who were no longer able to continue farming activities due to advanced age or disability. Then there's a lack of understanding on the part of an average voter regarding the definition of either a family home or family farm. It is likely that many voters assumed that this included any home, e.g. a parent's primary home, vacation home, an unused home, a home already occupied by a child, or rental property, that this was not intended to continue as a rental property. Again, I refer to the ballot arguments regarding that as well. It is difficult to believe that the intent of the voters was to price children out of family homes or family farms, nor is it likely that voters understood what those terms meant. It may be that this confusing terminology was intentional in an effort to gain support for the proposal. Someone I know actually supported the proposal due to the carrot afforded by the proposition without understanding the devastating impacts on their own family, the much larger stick. I suspect that person is far from alone. This type of confusion is likely the result of allowing real estate interests to advance self-interested proposal at the last possible moment for inclusion on the ballot without the legislature vetting its devastating impacts on future generations. I understand that the legislature went so far as to call a special election at the last possible moment to ensure that this proposal appeared on the November ballot, in which most voters were far more focused on the presidential race. Another commenter on 114 also noted that this proposition is essentially two ballot measures in one, adding to the confusion and possible legal vulnerabilities. This lack of clarity, misleading arguments and interpretations, the self-interest behind it, the manner in which it was placed on the ballot, and the absolutely devastating impact this will have on a significant number of families, which likely won't be fully understood until they receive a supplemental or massively increased tax bill, demonstrate a complete and total lack of due diligence on the part of the legislature. I urge the board to note these concerns, consider the possibility that their legal representative's interpretation is not correct, e.g. in regard on how an average voter interpreted the proposition, terminology, and the arguments presented, and request that the legislature consider clarifying it in a manner that was likely intended by voters. Our next comment is from Janice Marcial. I am concerned about my children who have worked on the family farm their entire life. They made a choice to stay in the agriculture business, producing food for our county and the world. Their future is to continue to produce food. When I pass, the taxes will raise so much that they cannot afford to keep the land. Their lives will change. The different types of food production generates a wide range of net income. Is the type of production that equal the calculation of value going to be taken into consideration enough to make it fair? I could own ground that is suitable to produce a higher paying crop, but we chose to produce crops that we have for a generation. Thank you. The next comment is from Alice Wissing. Dear BOE members, yesterday it was stated that delaying implementation of Prop 19 would require a constitutional amendment. On March 4th, 2020, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency due to COVID. This gave unlimited powers to health officers, both locally and at the state level, in order to slow the virus. No legislature, government body, or even the governor can overrule a health officer's orders. Despite this emergency, the California Association of Realtors, along with the governor and the legislature, pushed through Proposition 19, knowing full well it would force property owners to sell or face assessor liens due to 500% tax increases. This sell-off is scheduled to begin February 16th, coinciding with an exponential increase in coronavirus due to a new super spreader variant. Selling homes during a health emergency will result in citizens defying stay-at-home orders issued by health officers and the California Department of Public Health. It will require interaction with contractors, house cleaners, movers, gardeners, realtors, and potential buyers. Those who transfer a deed before February 16th will interact with notaries, witnesses, and family members outside of their household. In desperation to avoid financial ruin, property owners will expose themselves to coronavirus against their will. I myself have an autoimmune disorder that increases risk of hospitalization threefold. I also have two parents in their 90s on hospice. Thanks to Proposition 19, I will be forced to sell or hurriedly prepare their home as a rental due to the 500% tax increase. All this while my county has 0% ICU availability. As we push forward with Prop 19, the indifference towards the health and safety of property owners deserves an explanation. The California Association of Realtors and the legislature are complicit in encouraging the defiance of health orders. Assessors have the right and moral obligation to suspend Prop 19 regulations until property owners can address its consequences safely. If not, they too are complicit in fueling our public health catastrophe. Our next comment is from Carol Sato. Thank you, board members, for allowing me to state my concerns regarding Proposition 19 and how it impacts parent-child property tax transfers. The proposed legislation written in Proposition 19 focuses on inherited primary residences, and Sections 2.1 only discusses what happens to primary residences upon transfer, but does not mention other real property at all. The only vague reference to other real property transfers appears only in Section 2.1D at the bottom of the page 2 of the proposition, where it has one sentence stating, Subdivision H of Section 2 shall be inoperative as of February 16, 2021. Section 2 is the existing language of the current California Constitution, which voters would need to go search for to find out what is becoming inoperative. The last half of Section 2H1 is where it mentions that the first $1 million of the full cash value of all other real property between parents and their children are not included in change of ownership. This is a significant change of the legislation that has been in place for the past 34 years. It will result in millions of dollars of additional property taxes to be paid by families who have sacrificed and saved over the years to have non-primary residence property to pass down to their children. A change of this magnitude should have been highlighted or even mentioned as a change to the state constitution. It should not have been hidden in one line at the bottom of page 2 as an afterthought. If the state wishes to remove the exclusion of the first $1 million of the full cash value of all other real property, it should be put forth to the voters on a future ballot. The way it was presented in Proposition 19 is not a forthright way to do it. Thank you for taking this into consideration as you implement new legislation. The next comment is from Allison Batate. I was only able to listen to a portion of yesterday's meeting, but I thought I heard that family farms cannot be held in a corporation. How would a family farm held in an LLC be handled upon inheritance under Prop 19 rules? Our next comment is from Denise Paddock. Will property under the Williamson Act also be reassessed under Prop 19 when it includes a family home and is transferred to a child of the transferor? Or will it continue to have the lower assessed value of the Williamson Act before it transfers? The next comment is Danielle Cohen. Please exempt disabled children, SSA, California State Medical or Regional Center determined from the upward adjustment of inherited property taxes as a result of Prop 19. From John Jackson, it seems unlawful that the Prop 19 as it appeared on the ballot was so misleading. Is there any way this can be litigated for misconduct, misrepresentation, and fraud to the people? By calling it the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled, Families and Victims of Wildfires or Natural Disasters Act, the voters misunderstood that the act was giving them a break and raising taxes on all other family home transfers. Why didn't they make it clear that most transfers to a child would cause a higher tax assessment? Most homes in the Bay Area are well over $1 million. Regionally, this is an enormous injustice, just another money grab by California lawmakers to line their pockets. Even the experts didn't seem to know. From Marie Jackson, can't the deadline of February 15th be delayed until there are clear guidelines and interpretations for family farms and ranches with family homes on them? California has the most production of agriculture of any state. The California government should be watching out for this huge sector of its economy instead of looking for ways to do away with it. A second comment from Denise Paddock. What steps can be taken to reduce higher taxes for transfer of family farms to a child under Prop 19? Please outline them to help the farm and ranch families know what to do to allow next generations to be able to keep farming and ranching and growing food for California, the United States, and the world. From Jerry Paddock. What steps can be taken for a principal residence that has a market value of $2.5 million and a low assessed value of around $200,000 to be able to pass their property to their children without causing such an extreme rise in real estate property tax for their children under Prop 19? The parent has intentionally stayed in their home expecting to have their children get a low real estate tax base to help the children into the future. Please list all types of preparation that should or could be done to help this family. And the last one is from Jane Daskalos. Regarding Prop 19, the implementation of the February 15th deadline, please extend by 1 month. Due to COVID, the recorder's office is closed. Cases are taking more than a month to record, and paperwork is not coming back for over a month. Deadline is especially important because the last business day is a full 3 days before February 16th. We are unable to go in person to get our properties recorded. People with greater than one child and greater than one property should be able to pass on a house to each child. How would we expect a parent to decide which child can inherit a house the child can afford the property tax on? The rest of the children would likely be forced to sell their inherited property due to inability to afford the property tax. What if there are two parents who each own a property who are legally married but separated? Can each pass on a residence to their child? What if a married couple owns two homes, one spends more than 50% time at one and the other parent spends more than 50% time at the other? Could each parent pass on the home to one child that parent declares is his or her primary residence? What if a person has to live in a nursing home? Would they still be able to consider their family home their primary residence? The 1 million exemption needs to be indexed to increase property values. Thus, if it can be proven that currently the home would currently be within the assessment plus $1 million extra when the home is inherited, the inflation index should reflect that the property should not be reassessed when transferred. Any future changes to Prop 19 or new propositions should be a complete reset. People are transferring properties now under duress, not having enough time to know what to do. If a property is not a primary residence and transferred now, and later this proposition is reversed and the property is transferred back, the transfers of non-primary residents being done now should not be counted in any future totals that may become available for transfer in the future. Special needs exemptions, arguments that people have requested, can be similarly argued by people whose children do not meet the definition for full disability. Some people have other reasons they are unable to work and afford the property tax. Could other medical conditions that do not meet the definition of disability or just inability due to high assessed value and dramatic increase in assessment? This law should be uniformly applied to all. Everyone's children are at risk of having to sell their parents' property that the parents worked so hard to purchase due to inability to afford the property tax. That is the final written comment.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, can you please check with AT&T and see if there's anybody on the line that wishes to speak on this item?
Yes. If you would like to make a public comment on item M1B1 legislative action, the AT&T moderator will give you instructions. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if anyone would like to make a public comment?
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. Once again, it's 1, 0. Our first will come from the line of Karam Jussel. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Kareem Garisi with the California Association of Realtors. CAR would like to reiterate its prior comments, which we made yesterday, that it is supportive of CAA's immediate concern regarding needed clarification related to the February 16th, 2021 date contained in Proposition 19, and would also respectfully urge the BOE to consider that any immediate follow-up legislation, either included in a trailer bill or otherwise, also include clarification related to the April 1st, 2021 date, consistent with question 1 of the BOE Chief Counsel's recent memorandum on this issue. I would also quickly note, members, CAR participated not only yesterday in this particular meeting, but also is calling in today and certainly appreciates the robust conversation that's taking place, not only among members, but also from the public comments as well. As you know, CAR was the proud co-sponsor of Proposition 19, and certainly California voters did approve that, the state should provide increased benefit to not only wildfire victims, but also other vulnerable populations such as seniors. And so we were very proud to be a co-sponsor on Proposition 19, but certainly are very mindful of not only the robust dialogue that's taking place, but also that there still is work that needs to be done regarding clarification on this issue. And so just wanted to respectfully say, Mr. Chair and members, that we are very grateful for the collaboration of the BOE, also welcome any public input, and are also grateful for the collaboration not only with the assessors, but also with the California professional firefighters, and look forward to not only having a trailer bill or other vehicle not only address these immediate concerns of the February 16th date and the April 1st date, but also a more robust and comprehensive package perhaps later in the session. And so thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members, for allowing us the opportunity to speak. And I'll go ahead and conclude my comments now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next comment will come from the line of Allison Badiotti. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank you for allowing me to state my concerns. First of all, I get this is a democracy and majority rules, but I believe that this proposition was represented clearly and accurately, it never would have passed. I understand the intention was to prevent East Coast investors, celebrities, wealthy non-California residents, and trust fund heirs from avoiding paying their fair share of taxes in California. But what Prop 19 is actually doing is stealing farms, ranches, and vacation cabins that hardworking middle-class Americans have worked hard, very hard for. As far as the limited exclusion for farms, even with the value test at 1 million buffer, they just won't be able to afford the possible 600% increase in taxes, especially here in the Bay Area. I'm a fifth-generation Alameda County native with roots in agriculture. Both parents worked outside the home. We did not go on vacation other than camping. We did not go to restaurants because my parents chose to spend their hard-earned money for long-term security, not only for themselves, but for us. My father has gone to great lengths to keep his family ranch established in 1887. I repeat, 1887 in the family in Alameda County. Now, even with my brother prepared to take over the ranching operation and make it his principal residence when inherited, it's possible he may not be able to afford the new taxes, even with the value test. My husband and I together managed to buy our own ranch here in Alameda County 23 years ago. Not an easy feat. Our intention is to pass it on to our children to carry on the ranching operation. Again, like my parents, we don't go on vacations. We don't spend extravagantly. We've invested all our income on this ranch to secure a future for our children. Now, after inheriting what we've worked so hard for and sacrificed for, they still may not, most likely won't be able to afford the taxes. Inherited properties should be exempt from reassessment, which fits with the intention of the proposition. Farms, ranches especially should be exempt, truly exempt, not just the limited exemption. I feel I'm being taxed out of California. My question: how can a proposition so misrepresented and so poorly written and unclear, even in the eyes of professionals, be legal? What can we do to protest this unfair taxation? And lastly, please consider who put this on the ballot. Was it AARP? Firefighters? Americans with Disability? No, no, and no. It was the realtors. Thank you for giving me my time.
Thank you.
Our next comment will come from the line of Ron Ortel. Please go ahead. Your line is open. I apologize, Mr. Ortel. Please try again. Your line is open.
Can you hear me okay? Hello?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I was moved by what that rancher just said. I could hear the emotion in her voice. I feel much the same way. I did email my comments in and they were read, so I won't go over all of them again. But again, I think the voters didn't understand the term. I don't think it was defined, family, home. I don't think that was defined at all. Or continue, the word continue. You know, I believe they intended it to not continue as a rental home, and that was it. That's pretty much what it was stated. As far as the California Real Estate Association representative there, he shouldn't be proud. He should be ashamed of what they've done here. This is a disgrace. And as far as the firefighters are concerned, the people who live in these high-risk areas are the ones who should be paying for the firefighting costs, not everyone throughout California. I've never been so disgusted by something that's come before the state in my life. Don't mean to go off on this, but I think there's going to be a chance this thing's going to be litigated. I hope. Anyway, yeah, I would urge you to not move forward with a recommendation until you actually understand what this proposition said. Look at the ballot language itself. It does not state all this stuff about primary home having to be the primary home of the transferor, for example. It talks about family home. What do you think that means to an average voter? You know, I could just go on about this, but anyway, please do review my letter again. And also, I'm very uncomfortable with this talk about using the firefighters as an ally, and the real estate people too, an ally to push this thing through. That's the problem. It's an inappropriate role for you guys to be referring to them as an ally. Comment was made shortly before you opened this to public comment. So anyway, thanks very much. That's it.
Vice Chair Schaefer here. Could the previous speaker identify himself?
Me, Ron Ortel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next comment will come from the line of Marianne Welch. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yes. As I said before, I hope that the board is listening to all of these people crying out to you. And I agree with the last speaker that basically said, if you people did nothing, and I mean nothing, the legislation really needs to do their job, but they're passing it over to the Board of Equalization to figure it all out. And then you guys are going to go and say, well, we think this and we interpret it like this and blah, blah, blah. This Proposition 19 is a disgrace. Yes, it was put on by the real estate people. Then what happened? The legislators quickly made a twist to it, and they put in the 3 constitutional amendments, and they also did Senate Bill 300 that Newsom signed just to get it on the ballot, and they never reviewed it, never did their job correctly, and now we are all suffering. You people are all having to listen to this. All the people of California that have any kind of property, big, small, farm, whatever, are hurting. They're hurting. And as far as I'm concerned, you people are trying to back it up, and that last guy is right. Why listen to the firefighters or listen to the real estate? They're the one. The firefighters are going to benefit, and he's right. Wherever you live, you should be paying for it, or PG&E should be paying for the fire issues of California. That's another issue. But really, another lady that mentioned that she said, well, why was it that they even put it on the ballot at this time? Because it's a health crisis. She's absolutely right. They did it because they wanted to get some more money from their taxpayers. It's that simple. It was totally corrupt. But I want you to know that if I heard you, the board yesterday, say that you people, the Board of Equalization, cannot put it on hold. And then I think you said that it has to come from the Secretary of State. Am I correct on that? I'm not sure, but anyway, I sent a fax to the Secretary of State, Panetta, there, and I said I'm requesting a hold on Proposition 19, and that the Board of Equalization cannot do it all right now. Only the Secretary, because the Board of Equalization cannot put a hold on Proposition 19. Only the Secretary of State can authorize a hold. That was my understanding of yesterday's talk. Here's why, and here's what I'm telling the Secretary of State. Voters not given all the information on Proposition 19 in the Voters Handbook. The legislator passed 3 constitutional amendments. Senate Bill 300, no public hearing, no review by the legislator. Now given to the Board of Equalization to decide what to do. The next thing here is the main issue is that property taxes for middle class and poorer people will have an increase of 600 to 700% tax increase. Renters' costs will also go up. Citizens do not have enough time to put their affairs in order due to the health crisis, no jobs, too much stress at this time. Proposition 19 is ill-timed and unaffordable with 600 to 700% tax increase. More people will become homeless at this time. Proposition 19 can tax citizens out of their homes. That's a fact, and I want the board to understand that. You can be taxed out of your home. Inheritance is a right. Remember that. Inheritance is a right. States are greed. The state's greed is unjust, okay? And then I put here, please put a hold on Proposition 19 at this time. I said there are too many issues to understand. Even the Board of Equalization is trying their best. It is also against Article 28, Section 4, 2.1b. Cannot have more than one issue on a proposition at the same time. Prop 19 has more than one. Thank you for your consideration. A hold is a fair request at this time. We're in the middle of a crisis, a health crisis. We're in the middle of an economic downturn, and the Board of Equalization right now. I know that you guys are trying to do your best, but really, this whole thing, if you're listening to the taxpayers, if you're listening to all the conversation today, people are hurting. They are not even remotely for this proposition. It seems to me that the Board of Equalization, the best that they could do is shove it right back to the legislators and say, do your job. We cannot do this. It's too complicated. It's not written wrong. You didn't do your job. We need to put it on hold. People cannot deal with all this, plus deal with the crisis of health crisis and trying to deal with everyday costs going up. We have inflation. Now we have a new president coming in. And today, President-elect Biden is offering a $1.9 trillion to try to start the economy again or get it going somehow. The point is we have a crisis. This state is mismanaged. This state is only looking for money. And then they have basically the retirement packages for all of you guys are $1.3 trillion. I mean, and then we have the other problem from a foreign investor or a foreign company like BYA China car company lobbying our legislators. And they don't have the stomach or the backbone to stand up. Also, they're all Democratic and nobody is looking at balancing the budget, doing it right. Now, Newsom wants it to have a budget of $227 billion. He can't even manage the unemployment office. He can't even do that. I mean, we are in trouble. And taxing people at 600 or 700% tax increase is outrageous. It's criminal. They should go to jail. It's wrong, wrong, and wrong. I hope the board, I love you guys. I know you're doing your job, but what you really need to do is shove it right back to the legislators and say, look, do your job. We can't handle all this. It's too much. It's this, it's that, it's farm, it's disabled, it's this, it's that. Can you imagine what people are going through? I have friends right now that have been calling their trust attorneys, been calling attorneys, trying to get it clear.
Is there a limit on public comment?
Okay,
I'm sorry.
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you've exceeded your time limit. Thank you. Colleagues, let's be mindful about the time limit that we allot so that we make sure that every speaker has the same amount of time to speak, okay?
Well, you know, actually, on that note, let me ask Mr. Nanjo, is there a minimum that we are supposed to allow?
No, at this point, it's what's reasonable given the board's schedule and the board's workload, if you will. At this point, since at the beginning of the presentation or the meeting, we said 3 minutes, we should try to stay with no more than 3 minutes per speaker.
Okay, let's remind
Keeping time.
Ms. Taylor, if we can keep track of that.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you. Was that the last speaker?
We have a few more in queue. The next one in line for comment is Elizabeth Pope. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
And let's try to keep it brief.
It'll be brief. I thank you for letting me comment. I'll try not to get emotional about this. But I live in a family home with my father, he's going to be 100 next month. And it was my parents, he's an original owner. I'll tell you that he's lived in the house for 65 years. And it was my parents' wish and my desire to remain in the family home after their passing. And given that this is the family home, I have an enormous emotional attachment to it that I can't put into words. And I fully expected to spend the rest of my days here. And needless to say, I'm totally devastated with what's happened. And at this late stage in my life, I can't fathom the thought of leaving my family home and leaving California. I've been here forever. And, you know, it's like a nightmare that you live 24 hours a day that you just can't shake and you can't wake up from. And not only, you know, am I brokenhearted, but the salt in the wound is that there are two families across the street that are living under Proposition 13. And one of them lives on the East Coast. He doesn't live in the house. And the other sold his own home to move into his mother's, probably to get the tax break. Now, neither of them, as I understand it, are going to be affected by Proposition 13. And I don't know how that's fair for someone like me and others like me who live in this. I mean, I live in this home. I've lived here for years. And it looks like I'm going to be forced out because I can never afford to pay the taxes. And, you know, it's unfair. And like I say, I'm just brokenhearted. I cannot imagine leaving my home. It's everything I have. So thank you very much for allowing me to comment.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to the line of Jan Hopping. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi, my name is Jan Hopping, and my sentiments go out to all of you who have spoken before. I will be very short here. Just want to say a few words how I see this: unethical, illegal, unclear, misrepresented, and misunderstood. It's a total disgrace. I would like to piggyback on what the speaker said about if the BOA cannot change the date for this implementation, and the Secretary of State can, if I understand correctly, I think all our efforts should be on that, to change the date and to eliminate this proposition foremost, but to also focus a priority right now to delay it so we can get through this COVID crisis, those of us in particular who are on the front lines and working overtime and really have no energy to change our position to protect our inheritance at this juncture. Ridiculous. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I understand what you're saying correctly, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Our next in line is Peter Weschler. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hello. I just wanted to describe to you the situation that I'm facing. I'm a homeowner, and I'm inheriting my parents' family home as well, which is in San Francisco. I have a disabled child who is growing up. I don't know what my child's future will hold. What I can say is that discrimination against disabled persons is widespread, especially in terms of employment. Fortunately, California is coming out of that period. We have programs like CalAble, which allow young people to save for retirement, to save for things like vacations, things that they couldn't do historically if they were getting public assistance. They essentially would be forced to remain poor, absolutely poor. They would have to have less than $2,000 in their account in order to receive any public assistance, right? So we're finally coming out of that period and recognizing the discrimination that disabled persons have faced. So here I am, and I have, you know, essentially 2 months in order to try and make a decision. And I want you to understand the decision tree that I have had to face. Let's say I tried to preserve the tax basis for the benefit of my child by you know, completing the transfer of the property to my child for his benefit before the deadline. If I do so, the only mechanism that's available, as far as I understand it, is an irrevocable grantor's trust. An irrevocable trust means that no lender will allow me to refinance the property or to borrow money against that property. That means I cannot improve the home for the purposes of renters. It means that I cannot plan for my own financial future should I need to. I am absolutely screwed if I try to do that. If I choose not to do it, my child faces the tax consequences. It's a catch-22, and I have no way out. So I'd like to request, you know, as prior commenters have requested, that the date of February 15th, actually February 11th, be reconsidered, because there's so many things that we have to face in terms of trying to make these kinds of decisions. I would also like to, if it's at all possible, that the board could make a comment or answer some questions. I would really like to know the legality of Prop 19 in terms of eliminating in one fell stroke Prop 13, Prop 58, and Prop 193 all at the same time. Secondly,
Your
at the
3
beginning,
minutes have elapsed.
just really quickly, it would be really great. It would just be really great to know how the question of who qualifies as a disabled person, how is that decision made? Because as we know, there will be lobbying interests who will lobby against, you know, that qualification, which will exclude so many people who have to make it in California. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final in queue comes from the line of Robert Finucci. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yeah, thank you. It's Robert Finucci, and I'm a tax lawyer in the Napa Valley with about 30, 40 years of experience, and I've never seen legislation so deceitful and fraudulent in my 40-year career. I do a lot in the property tax world for many, many years now. And I was, you know, aware of Prop 19 before it passed, and 15, which did not pass. And so I was reading it very, very carefully with respect to the $1 million exclusion for non-residential properties. I support all of the concerns regarding the residents, but that's too complicated to get into. But when Prop 19 passed, I was looking for, well, what did they do with the $1 million exclusion for non-residential transfers from parent to child? And you couldn't find anything in the body of the text that dealt with it. And so my first assumption was that they were just carrying over the 1 million exclusion for non-residential properties to residential properties and limiting, you know, the transfer of, you know, $25 million residences. And I thought, well, that, you know, that makes some sense. I understand that. But Prop 19, with respect to residences, it's not carrying over the assessed value. It's basically capping it at $1 million. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm dealing with. I have clients that have owned family farms for generations, and they have low Prop 13 or assessed values. In one case, that I'm working on is they basically have a Prop 13 assessed value of $1 million. The property, the farm is now worth approximately $25 million due to an increase over the years. It's not held in an entity, which is another issue, but there's not time to deal with that. And so if this transfer occurs after February 15th, the property tax will go from $10,000 to $260,000, which will require my client to sell their farm that's been in the family for generations after generations. There's another question that I'm not sure I have an answer to, or I don't think anybody has an answer to, is that if you have a predeceasing spouse who dies prior to February 16th, and they put their real estate into an irrevocable trust for their surviving spouse, that when the surviving spouse passed away under current law, that $1 million property tax exclusion would be freed up. So what happens in a situation where you have a predeceasing spouse that passes away prior to February 16th, but the surviving spouse doesn't pass away until after February 15th? Do we lose the exclusion on the predeceasing spouse? Unclear. I've heard different interpretations. So those are a couple of my comments. But to bear the point home, though, is that with the farm example, when you have a $1 million property tax base, then you can carry over that $1 million exclusion so that transfer to the child who's continuing the farming operation would have no property tax increase. So, you know, it's limited, it's already limited to $1 million, but it makes a huge difference.
3 minutes have expired.
To the family farm, and this is fraudulent. I think we should glean or take some of the commissions from the real estate brokers that try to, you know, force this down. Nobody understood what they were voting for, even the people that are brokers and real estate agents.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
And we did have one final one queue up. It comes from the line of Laura Maynard. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi, I'd like to thank you again for allowing us all to speak. I'm a senior at high risk for COVID, and I'm living in the Bay Area. One thing I just want to note is there are also many seniors. I'm not one of them, but there are many seniors that are also just surviving on SSI. So even to make plans or to find out your options with attorneys can cost as much as $1,000 just for a consultation. And I'm understanding that to put documents in place can cost from $4,000 to $8,000. So that certainly does represent a big chunk of change, as people have said, during these COVID times or during any time. The last thing I wanted to say is that I have spoken with 5 attorneys who are competent in this area, because not just any attorney knows both estate and planning and the BOE, the real estate side of things. All 5 of them are booked up. And I had contacted my own attorney back before Christmas, and he's had a family emergency and can't help. So even those of us who are aware that they may well want to make changes, I don't have the opportunity. So again, I'd like to ask that it be delayed until there's some guidance and we have a better opportunity to respond. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
And we have no further in queue at this time.
Thank you. Members, this item is now before us, but let me ask if I can get Ms. Fleming, if she wouldn't mind reading the staff recommendation into the record, just so we're clear about the process, as well as the content of this legislative package.
Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. Chairman Vasquez, this is David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. If it's with the okay of Ms. Fleming, I would be able to read it in if that's okay.
Sure, I'm good with that.
Thank you very much. And let me just say, after listening to all the public comments as on the impact of Prop 19, I understand the gravity of the situation, and I understand how it may impact the whole many taxpayers. But be that as it may, we have legislation, we have an amendment, legislative proposal that has passed, and the implementation dates, the effective dates are coming fast upon us. So the staff recommendation is that the board approve the proposed legislation as drafted and attached in the January 14th, 2021 notice and agenda item M1A3, proposed draft legislation, which includes provisions to implement the parent-child and grandparent-grandchild exclusion, the seniors and severely disabled base year value transfer, and the victims of wildfire and natural disasters base year transfer, and to include cover letters from the executive director and the California's Assessors Association, and to send the proposed legislation to the legislature as expeditiously as possible. And that is the staff recommendation, Chair Vasquez.
Thank you. Members, if there's no further discussion, I would like to entertain a motion to move the staff recommendation.
So,
can I comment?
Sure, Member Gaines.
If Member Schaefer would like to speak first, I could speak.
Well, I would so move, and then Member Gaines could comment before we vote. And then I have another motion after that, but go ahead.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate all the testimony that we've heard today, and quite frankly, I'm very saddened by what's happened with Prop 19 and the impact that it's having on families having to now deal with tax increases that were not contemplated. And there are aspects of Prop 19 that are good. The base year home value is a great concept, and I could support that in and of itself, but that gives the ability of someone to take their base year value of their home and transfer it to a different county throughout all the 58 counties. That is good, but when we take a look at this aspect of the tax impact of being able to pass a home on to the next generation, whether it's children or grandchildren, and then you take a look at the farm aspect where this initiative, it sounds like in some cases, and I don't know how many cases, but it's going to force people out of their family farm, and that is very very sad and disconcerting. When I try to look at what we could do, what I could do in terms of trying to help, there has been discussion in reference to an irrevocable trust that could be put in place, but it has to happen very quickly, and we've talked about that deadline being February 16th of 21. And so people have to get in touch with their attorney and draft that up quickly. We did have someone call and ask about a grantor's trust and the limitations that I don't know the difference between a grantor's trust and an irrevocable trust. But apparently there's limitations there on his ability to refinance and a number of other things, improvements. I think ultimately we need a unbiased ballot summary and title. Wouldn't that be nice if we had a bipartisan commission that could determine the summary and title on these initiatives that are before the people, because you need to hear you need to hear what get the straight scoop, because you're going to have the proponents and the opponents on any ballot initiative, but wouldn't it be nice to have a clear and concise, kind of transparent view of an initiative that was put together? You know, nothing's perfect, but if you had some sort of bipartisan commission, we have a bipartisan commission to determine district lines for the Assembly and the Senate and constitutional offices, like the BOE, for instance. I'm wondering about, I've got a question, if I could, for Mr. Nanjo, in terms of a court injunction. Can you explain how that works? Would there be a pathway for people harmed by the initiative for a court injunction to slow this down?
Good afternoon, Member Gaines, members of the board. To answer that, the legal procedure, if you will, would be for someone to challenge the proposition. Typically, such challenges are done before the proposition is voted on. That would be the mechanism by which you would challenge the proposition, is somebody would have to essentially file a lawsuit post election challenging the proposition. That being said, you know, it's hard for me to say whether that would be successful or not, but generally speaking, in a court of law, especially once the proposition's already passed, the court's going to give all deference to the proposition being valid. So yes, it would be a challenging task for someone to take on.
Okay, I know that, you know, it was an initiative passed by the people, and that initiative has certain deadlines and certain dates that I think have to be lived by. I don't see a path around that, other than sometimes you'll see that an injured party will go to the court and they'll issue an injunction that could delay things or slow things down. So that's the only reason I'm asking the question. But I think that is in conclusion of my comments here. So thank you for the opportunity, and we will do our best to answer questions for our constituents that are going through all this and trying to figure it out. I want to thank the staff for all their expertise, and I hope we're capturing people's names and phone numbers and emails so that we can respond to each question as they come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the members?
My motion.
Vice Chair Schaefer, yes, go ahead.
Yes, well, I move we adopt the recommendations of the staff.
I will go ahead and second that. It's been moved and second. Is there any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none. Let me have Ms. Taylor go ahead and take the roll on this one.
Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous, folks. I just wanted to do a check here on our agenda. I was wondering what the preferences of the members now. Do we want to take a short break now, or try to go through a little longer? I'm hearing from staff that they're going to need a break. Now it's just a matter of whether we want to. I was going to suggest maybe if we could do maybe like a 30-minute lunch break. Does that work for folks?
Sure, that works for me.
Yes, that's fine.
Is that good? Okay. And I see Ernie Dronenberg still on. I know he's going to be with us. Hope you can return, because we still have some more business that we need to do to support you folks, and we'll take that up right after lunch, if that's okay, in about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Chairman Vasquez, this is Chief Counsel Henry Nanjo. Can we try to go a little further before we break for lunch? I'm concerned about some of our speakers maybe needing to get on to other matters. So maybe we can cover the guidance and rulemaking before we break for lunch?
Sure, I was just worried about staff, so staff's okay going forward, huh?
We can use a break, but I think it would be, timing-wise, it would work better for us if it's just after 1.
Motion to close down.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Let me get Ms. Taylor to call the next item, and then we'll break after the next one. Does that work?
That'd be great. Thank you.
All righty. Ms. Taylor?
Okay. The second sub-item is M1B2, guidance and rulemaking.
Okay, members, on this item, regarding notifying the legislators of the action we just took, I wanted to, actually, in light of this, I was kind of hoping we were heading in this direction. So I took the liberty to work on a draft letter in support of this legislation that we would send to the leadership in support of the assessors and this motion we just approved. And Vice Chair Schaefer and his staff has been working with us on this. And I'd love to get all of the members on board signing on to this. And I know it's difficult because we have such a short window here that we're working with. So I was wondering if it was possible to submit this through staff and let them post that, and so you all the members have an opportunity to look over this letter before we send it off. But like I said, we're kind of under a time constraint here because I want to make sure this hits the legislators, at least the leadership, by next Tuesday, Monday being a holiday. So if you're interested and willing to sign on, I'd appreciate your feedback on it after you have an opportunity to look at it. But it's, like I said, you're going to have to be reviewing this thing over this 3-day weekend. And if you're not comfortable with it, that's okay too. At the end of the day, at least the chair and the vice chair will go ahead and send this thing off because I just want to make sure we have some support for this legislative package we just approved before it gets too late in the game, you know, because February 16th is right around the corner. And basically, in a nutshell, what we were looking, what's going to be stated in this letter is it just states support for the proposed legislation and addresses the urgency of the action due to the February 16th and April 1st effective dates. And then the other part would be, it would indicate the sensitivity and the seriousness of the legislation to both assessors and thousands of taxpayers who are vitally concerned about how Prop 19 will be implemented. We can send this draft through board proceedings. And then in that, I'm sorry, is that Ms. Cohen?
Yes, sir. I was just going to ask that you circulate the letter for the board members so we could take a look at it.
Exactly. That's what I'll do. I was just going to say, we'll send it through board proceedings so you all can take a look at it, and hopefully you're comfortable with the language so we can expedite this as soon as possible. Like I said, we're looking at a deadline of Tuesday, January the 19th, only so it could hopefully have an impact before this February 16th deadline that's right around the corner. And with that, if members are okay with it, I would like to move that action.
Chairman Vasquez, this is Yvette Stowers here.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
I understand you're going to circulate the letter and we can have an opportunity to review, which I think is great. My question is, are you asking if we're in agreement that you want all the members and the controller to actually sign the letter, or are you going to write the letter so it's coming from all of the members and the controller without necessarily needing all the signatures?
What I will do is when I send it through board proceedings, it's going to be a draft. I will put it with all the members on board. Now, if for some reason I get some pushback from any of the members on it, I will have to make those adjustments, and it may just go out. That's supported by the chair and the vice chair.
That's not what I was asking. I was assuming
I'm
that
sorry.
all the members are on board. Are you actually asking for their signature, which could slow things down? Or are you just asking for their approval to send out the letter?
Well, ideally, I would love to have your signature on it. You know,
Okay.
once you take a look at it, if you're comfortable with it, sign on. I'd love to get your signature on it before it goes off next Tuesday.
That could, from my office, that could slow down the process.
Okay. Well, we'll try to work with that and see if that's all possible.
Okay.
But I understand the logistics of that as well. Thank you, though.
Yeah.
If everybody's comfortable with that, I'd like to go ahead and move that.
Do you need a second? I'll second the motion if that's what you need.
Please, Mr. Gaines, yes.
Very well, thank you.
And then we understand, like I said, this doesn't mean that you're all buying to it. You know, obviously you'll have an opportunity to view it, and hopefully you're all comfortable with it. I mean, it's nothing, I don't think it's anything really controversial other than it's just a supportive letter for this package we just approved to support the assessors as we move forward. Thank you with that. And I guess, Mr. Najo, legally, do we have to take a vote on this, or is just can we just get a consensus on that?
Chairman Vasquez, you can do it either way, consensus or a vote, however you prefer.
Well, let me, just to move this along, if there's no objection, I'll just assume we have consensus on this. Is that okay by the members?
Because you do have currently a motion and a second right now on the table.
Yes. All right, why don't we just go ahead and take the vote, Ms. Taylor?
Certainly. Chairman Vasquez?
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer?
Aye.
Member Gaines?
Aye.
Member Cohen?
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers?
Aye.
Thank you. So that's been moved unanimously. We'll go ahead and go with that. Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
Excuse me, Chair Vasquez, Member Gaines, are we taking a lunch break?
Yes. Well, let me ask staff, is Mr. Najo, are we good taking a break now, or do you want to go one more item?
No, this would be a good time to take a break. Thank you, Chairman Vasquez.
Perfect. Thank you for reminding me, because I was looking forward for the break now, but I wasn't sure if staff was ready. All right, why don't we go ahead? It looks, we're just about at 1 o'clock, so why don't we say 1:30, we'll reconvene.
Chairman Vasquez, this is
Yes.
Brenda Fleming. If I
Go
could,
ahead.
sir, please, today, could I ask for a little bit longer? Would you allow, and the board allow, a 40-minute lunch break today?
Sure, if the members are fine with that, you want to say like 45 to be safe?
Sure, that would be helpful. Thank you so much.
All right, so we will reconvene at 1:45.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Go ahead and please.